I am happy to be here with Professor Sarah Benor, who is Professor of Contemporary Jewish Studies at the Los Angeles campus of HUC JAR, where she teaches master's students in the School of Jewish Nonprofit Management and undergraduates at the University of Southern California. She's lectured widely about the social science of American Jews, sociolinguistics, Jewish languages, and she is founding co-editor of the Journal of Jewish Languages and founder and editor of the Jewish Language Research website and the Jewish English Lexicon, just to scratch the surface. Thanks for taking time to talk.
My pleasure.
Can you tell us a little bit about the current landscape of what is happening with Hebrew language education in part-time Jewish schools?
Sure. So first, just to clarify, part-time Jewish schools is in contrast to Jewish day schools. So Hebrew schools, religious schools, supplementary schools are other words that are used for that. And I'm currently working on a research project about the topic with my Neta Avineri and Rabbi Nikki Greninger. And so within a few months, we should have some more finalized information about this, but here is some preliminary information. The school directors of part-time Jewish schools in the United States do not see Hebrew proficiency as a goal. They do not expect the students to come out of their 3 hours a week or 4 hours a week really being able to speak Hebrew, even after several years. There are a few exceptions to this. There are some programs that have more contact hours and that have a primarily modern Hebrew orientation. But for the most part, American Jewish part-time schools think of Hebrew as something specifically for the bar and bat mitzvah and for being able to recite prayers. And so the focus is really on decoding Hebrew. That means being able to sound out the vowels and the consonants, not necessarily understanding what they're saying, and being able to recite Hebrew, especially in prayers and in Torah portions. And a common concern about this is that they're failing because they're not teaching Hebrew.
Great. So how would you say that these programs are working?
So I would say that if the goals of these programs are to teach decoding and to teach a love of Hebrew, I think that they're succeeding. But most of the schools really do succeed in teaching decoding well, that students are able to decode Hebrew and are able to perform at their bar and bat mitzvah, participate in prayers and that kind of thing. And lately there has been a movement to focus more on the affective goals, loving Hebrew, feeling like Hebrew is a part of who they are as a Jew, that it connects them to Jews in Israel and all around the world. And there's this program called Onward Hebrew, which is a bunch of Hebrew educators that have come together to focus on how to re-envision Hebrew education. And they focus on the affective goals. They also focus on Jewish life vocabulary, which I think is another important part of Hebrew education, which is Hebrew words that are used within English by Jewish communities in America.
Excellent, excellent. What are your recommendations going forward for these part-time schools as to what they emphasize and what they let go of?
Yeah, so if the schools see their goal as Hebrew proficiency, then they're bound to fail because it's really just not possible for somebody to come out of just a few hours a week of an educational program with proficiency in the language. But if they see their goal as lighting the Hebrew fire, that is getting people interested in Hebrew and perhaps fostering a desire to learn more Hebrew, then I think Jews will come out of these programs more likely to take Hebrew when they become college students or perhaps later in life. Jewish life vocabulary to foster a sense of being a full participant in American Jewish communities, and finally, feeling a sense of connection to Hebrew as if it is an important part of who they are as Jews.
Is that enough to sustain a lifelong commitment to Jewish life? Meaning, what's the correlation between Hebrew proficiency and Jewish identity?
Well, I guess it depends how you're measuring Jewish identity, right? Certainly, what I'm talking about here is in non-Orthodox communities. In Orthodox communities, because most Orthodox Jews attend Jewish day schools and yeshivas, they do have enough contact hours to really foster proficiency in textual Hebrew, in the ability to read the Tanakh and rabbinic literature, and to really not only decode it, but understand what they're saying. Judaism to cover, it's just impossible to do that. If you want to cover holidays and life cycle events and values and so much more about Jewish life, then you cannot possibly also do Hebrew, right? So it's a matter of priorities. And if your priority is to teach modern Hebrew so that someone can then go to Israel and really get around and have full conversations in Hebrew, then that should be your only goal. If your goal is to teach Torah stories, right? So, but most Jewish educational institutions have multiple goals. And I do think it's important for the goals to be well articulated. So if I had one piece of advice for educators in part-time Jewish schools, I would say, be clear about what your goals are. And so I think it is important to think about the goals.
Great. So I think my last question is, should we be thinking about trying to eliminate or reduce alienation? Meaning, is there a key vocabulary to participation in Jewish life, American Jewish life? And what does that entail? Is that the language of the Siddur, the prayer book? Is that some level of conversational proficiency? Is that the language that's used in American Jewish life? Should one of the goals be to reduce social alienation?
Yes, absolutely. I think the Jewish life vocabulary aspect of Hebrew education is really important for that. And I think of it not just as teaching Hebrew, but really as teaching Jewish English, because we as American Jews have a sense of communal participation, that we are speaking English, words from Hebrew and Yiddish. For example, saying Boker Tov when you come into the classroom as a teacher, and then talking about the holidays using the Hebrew words, and also the rituals and the life cycle events. And so I think when American Jews have more comfort with that vocabulary, with Jewish English, they can then feel more comfortable in Jewish life. But the same is true with the prayers. I think that when Jews feel comfort with the prayers that they're reciting, and when they have a sense of what they're saying, not necessarily word for word, but when they have a sense of the themes of each prayer, perhaps they will feel more comfortable in ritual settings.
Right. And it seems to me also that there's a wisdom within the language, right? If I say chesed, I don't just mean, oh, that's the Jewish way of saying kindness. It means something more. If I say tzedakah, I don't just mean charity. If I say mitzvah, I don't just mean good deed, right? That these words actually have a wisdom to them beyond just the translation. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think that's something that Jewish educational programs should focus on, not just using these words within Jewish English, but really getting into their roots and their origins and what other roots they're connected to. I think can be a really useful way of teaching about Hebrew and also fostering comfort in ritual settings and in Jewish communal settings.
Amazing. Thank you, Professor Sarah Benor. Check out her wonderful books online and all the great work she's doing. Keep up your amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.